Hey guys, today we're driving the 2024 Audi Q8 e-tron Sportback, formerly known as just the Audi e-tron, or I guess the e-tron Sportback. This will do 296 miles on an electric charge. It has 402 horsepower in sport mode or 355 horsepower in its just kind of normal drive mode. It has a 114 kilowatt hour battery pack and can fast charge with its 170 kilowatt onboard charger to 80% in about 30 minutes. So a pretty capable luxury electric vehicle. Starting price on this is about 79 grand. This is spec'd up to $97,000. Not cheap, but it is quite a nice EV. I've lived with it all week. Let's walk you around it. We'll talk about that experience and then we'll take it for a drive. So inside, we've got a pretty familiar Audi interior. Nice materials, a little bit of ambient lighting, some cool switchgear, some orange contrast stitching and seat piping, a massive panoramic moonroof, and a lot of screens. We've got this dual screen setup. Bottom screen is for climate controls. Top screen is for infotainment and multimedia. Kind of a different shifter here too. Forward and backward, and then there's a park button on the side. Feels mostly the same as Audi's other electric vehicles. I actually haven't driven the previous e-tron at all. This is kind of my first time in this type of vehicle. Range has increased substantially with the larger battery pack, almost 300 miles of range in the Sportback, a little bit more efficient than the standard e-tron Q8 SUV. Let's show you briefly around the rest of this car. It is raining some today. Hopefully no water is getting on the lens, but we've got a pretty spacious SUV in this. Good sized back seat, rear climate control, easy ingress and egress. Plenty of legroom back here. And just, I'm liking the interior of this Audi. This just feels very premium, very nice, very well equipped. It's an attractive and luxurious, functional and comfortable space. Adjustable headrests. And I like these door handles. Very sharp. Nice soft Alcantara suede there. Not a lot of room for the middle seat, but chances are this is going to be down most of the time in armrest form. I like how the seat belts have kind of an illuminated bit around them. Let's check out the rear hatch area. I always kind of struggle finding the opening spot for this. There we go. It's right in the middle under those first two Audi circles. Pretty high load floor here, but we get a compact spare tire, some room underneath. Pull down these rear seats, and I think that happens from the rear seat area. No levers to pull back here or anything like that, but a nice spacious SUV, and in Sportback form, a bit sportier looking than the standard Q8 e-tron. This sits on massive Hankook Ventus S1 Evo 3 EV tires in 265 40 R22. Front and rear, that is a square setup. Looks really sharp in this gray. This Q8 e-tron has a few expensive options on it, like the Prestige package. We'll include all those details in the description. One thing I do like about Audi's electric vehicles is that they offer charge ports on both sides of the car. We might have to have the vehicle off to open these up. Let's try that real quick. Look at that. Very neat. And on this side, you've got your fast charging connection. up to 170 kilowatts. All right, I don't believe this has a frunk, but let's show you what that looks like just
Your mobile
in case.
device is still in the vehicle.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just a little bit of room up here, not much, but as we've seen in a lot of EVs, kind of about average. All right, it is raining a lot. Let's hop inside and we'll take this for a drive. I like how it says Q8 Sportback e-tron Quattro right here. A little bit of lettering to remind you what you're driving in case if you forget. Lovely welcoming chime there. Wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, all that good stuff. We get a nice sound system in this Audi Q8 e-tron. You can see the Bang & Olufsen logo right down there, along with 2-seat memory settings, and then a button to pop the tailgate. Auto up-down windows on all 4 corners, simple controls. Yes, you get a screen for climate adjustments, but at least it's a constant screen that's always up, and you can access it and use everything pretty easily. There's constant icons for your heated and ventilated seats. There's buttons for your parking cameras and 360 cams. I think all the ergonomics in this Audi Q8 are actually pretty well laid out and ahead of a lot of their competitors in terms of simplicity and usability, which I really appreciate. We have a few different gauge cluster themes that we can select. So if you go into vehicle settings, or sorry, actually just regular settings, display and brightness, you can select between Classic, Sport, and e-tron for virtual cockpit. And that basically just kind of changes the order of things. There's a sport mode and then a smaller, different view. We're just going to stick with the classic gauge cluster because I think that looks pretty good in my opinion. Apologies for these wipers being a little bit louder than they should. We get a head-up display, adaptive cruise control with lane centering, which works very, very well. And nice looking reverse camera that rotates with the steering wheel. It's subtle, but makes a difference. Kind of a cool feature that a lot of Audis have had for quite a while, and Audi has kept it going here in this Q8. All right, let's set off. We'll take this for a drive. Hopefully the windshield wipers don't get too annoying, and we'll see how this thing is on the road. So if you're wearing headphones, listening to this being recorded in binaural audio, you can probably hear a little bit of EV noise. Like all Audi EVs, this does not have one pedal driving. You do get a little bit of regen with the paddle shifters. One strange thing about this Q8 e-tron is that it doesn't have a creep mode when you come to a stop. It just kind of puts on the brakes and you sit here and you don't set off until you tap the accelerator pedal. Makes negotiating tight parking spaces a little bit finicky, but you do get used to it after living with it for a little while. Brake pedal feels nice. Audi has pretty much committed to their drivers using the accelerator and the brake pedals and not really relying on one pedal driving. I mentioned earlier that this has 2 different horsepower figures in normal drive mode. It's about 355 horsepower, and with this weighing close to 6,000 pounds, I believe it's around 5,700 pounds, it's not that fast. It's kind of sluggish, to be honest, especially compared to a lot of its competitors. Granted, it's still a quick car. It's an EV, but you have to put it into sport mode to get an extra little bit of boost. I think 402 horsepower for just a few seconds, and that is nice to have. Sounds a little bit different from some other e-tron Audi products that we've driven, but still one of the cooler EV noises, I think. All right, boost mode. This feels proper. That's a good amount of power for an EV in this class. Not class leading, not nearly as fast as some of the competitors, but I think that's about as much as I would want out of an electric SUV. This is actually a pretty easy electric vehicle to live with on a daily basis. I like the ergonomics, I like the visibility. It feels a bit hefty, a bit softer than I was expecting, but it's kind of hard to hide 5,700 pounds of curb weight. I use the regen occasionally, but most of the time I'm just setting this to coast, and I'm using the cruise control quite a bit. This is a really nice system. A lot of information in the head-up display. You can choose between adaptive cruise without lane assist or with lane assist, and it does a very nice job keeping you centered between the lines. And adaptive cruise control in this Q8 is fantastic. I've been using it in traffic. It's keeping a good distance. The closest following distance is actually surprisingly close. I don't feel like I'm braking too often or holding traffic up behind me. I've really enjoyed using this car with its driving assistance systems this week, and again, haven't really turned those off as much as I do in some other vehicles. It doesn't get in the way. It's not an annoying system to live with, which is pretty much all you can ask for in this day and age. You got to push down through that kick down switch to access boost mode, and you'll see it vanish after a few seconds. So you only get it for a couple seconds, if that. But it is nice to have for quick bursts of acceleration. Let me give you guys a quick taste of what regen looks like. So we've got full regen braking. Battery pack has some heat into it. We'll hit the paddle shifter twice. And this is what decel looks like. So you can get slowed down pretty well. But again, it won't bring you into a complete stop, but it is useful in some traffic scenarios. And here's the mid setting, which is just a little bit less regen. And then in coast, this is off the accelerator. It just maintains speed forever. Here's regen again. Also, one note is that if you do have some regen turned on with the paddle shifter and you engage cruise control for whatever reason, and then you disable cruise control, that regen resets to coast, which is a bit annoying. It would be nice to maintain that. So you're always kind of having to reestablish that level of regen if that's what you prefer. Personally, I've just been driving this in 2-pedal mode pretty much the whole time I've had it, and I've gotten used to the coasting feature. I'll use the paddles occasionally, almost like I'm downshifting when approaching traffic or coming into a corner, but that's about it. Unfortunately, it's a little bit wet and greasy out today, so we're not going to be pushing the limits of this Q8 around a corner. It's definitely not as sporty as something like the RS e-tron GT that we've driven in the past, but it handles okay for an electric SUV. Again, like I said, suspension is a bit softer than I'm used to, and it is comfortable though, and I think that's the focus here. Is this is meant to be a very smooth, comfortable, relaxing vehicle. Pretty quiet at speed, not a lot of NVH in this cabin. I don't really have a whole lot to compare this to, especially with the previous version, just the regular e-tron. I do like that Audi is getting a little bit smarter about naming their electric vehicles now, not just calling them all e-tron. They're actually giving them some designations. So this Q8, yeah, it sounds about right for what it is. And I know it's nice to have a little bit extra range in this newer model. It would be nice to keep the weight down a little bit more, but overall, this has been a pretty nice EV to live with all week. Very comfortable, very relaxing, easy, simple, functional ergonomics, and that's kind of all I can ask for with an EV in this class, honestly. I think where it probably falls short versus its competitors is just outright performance, acceleration, stuff like that. But how much power do you really need in your luxury electric vehicle? I think this is more than fast enough. It looks good. I think it hits a nice balance and a nice mark for what it needs to achieve. I mean, after all, this is an SUV, and I'm kind of getting a little bit tired of manufacturers trying to turn every SUV into a sports car. It's just not necessary. So I like what Audi's done with this Q8. It just kind of is an Audi that happens to be electric, which is the same philosophy that they've done with a lot of their other e-tron models. Complaints? I would like to have the option for one-pedal driving, or the option for creeping at a stoplight, creeping forward. It's a little bit strange to have this not have one-pedal driving, but completely come to a stop at a stoplight and you foot off the brake pedal and you have to tap the accelerator to get going again. It would be nice to at least change that setting in the menus. I'm sure that's just a software update. So a bit difficult to navigate tight parking spaces because you always have to kind of tap the accelerator and slow down, hit the brake. It's a bit inconsistent in its operation and a little bit unnerving to drive sometimes because of it. But really, that's kind of the only complaint I have about this Audi Q8. Apple CarPlay connectivity's been a little bit finicky this week, but for the most part, it's worked okay. Other final thoughts: it's a pretty killer turning radius. It also has air suspension. You can raise and lower the vehicle for a little bit extra ground clearance if you so choose. You can access that by going into vehicle settings, and then you can raise and lower right there, which is very nice. So this probably gets pretty high for just a little bit of off-road capability. And then of course you've got a bunch of different drive modes, but honestly they don't really do a whole lot. Yes, they adjust the suspension stiffness. Dynamic is probably a little bit sharper. I've been leaving this in auto all week, and again, it's just a nice, comfortable electric SUV. So I doubt most owners will really mess with the drive modes in this too much. You do have a quick access drive select button down there, which is cool. And this does have an all-road or off-road mode, which will change your air suspension settings too. But there's a lot of drive modes in this Q8 e-tron. Let's walk around this one more time. It's no longer raining as much. You can see in dynamic mode, it lowers down, hunkers down just a little bit more, looking a lot less SUV-like. Actually, I'm curious to see how high it raises up in off-road mode. Look at this front grille design. The lighting element here is really cool. That's sharp. They've integrated the Audi badges into the adaptive cruise control system. They have done a great job on the design here. So it looks like this kind of automatically switched off. Let's go into off-road mode here. And that should raise us up all the way. I think maybe if we leave the key fob in the vehicle, that will keep it from turning off maybe. Let's see. Oh yeah, this gets up there. That's a lot of extra ride height compared to dynamic mode. And it's still going. Not sure how much off-roading you'd want to do on these 22-inch wheels with Hankook Performance summer tires, but at least you have the potential for that added ground clearance in the rain, in the snow. This air suspension is very versatile. It does ride very nicely. And look at that. That is a pretty big difference. All right, let's go drive this just a little bit more. I'll put it in dynamic mode. See how that changes things up. That's going to lower our suspension almost all the way down, just above comfort access mode. We'll grab our key fob here. Suspension stiffens up a little bit in this mode, but honestly, it's still pretty comfy and dynamic. And Audi's done a nice job with the brake pedal tuning here. It feels very normal, very natural. You still get good regen. They claim this is a little bit more of an efficient way to drive an electric vehicle. That's okay. I'm fine with this being a two-pedal driving experience. I like how at a stop it almost just kind of idles. There's a subtle hum underneath everything. Climate control system works really well. This is freezing cold AC. Testing out a new camera today. This is the new DJI Osmo 4, and it overheated after about 21 minutes of recording, so we pulled the battery doors off and charge door, and we'll see how long this lasts. Should be a pretty nice camera option for low light night driving. A little bit less distortion than the GoPros too. But if this also has overheating problems, then it's kind of a bummer. I get about 40 minutes usually out of my GoPro before that starts to overheat. You do sit very low in this Q8 e-tron Sportback, and you kind of have to. If you sit too high, your arms don't quite rest on the armrests here, so you're kind of surrounded by this cockpit, which, depending on how you're built, is either a good thing or maybe not such a good thing. It's a bit of a catch-22 with this driving position, because if you're a smaller person, I feel like you'd want to be higher up, but then your arms or torso wouldn't be long enough to reach these armrests, and that might be a little bit uncomfortable. All right, off we go. Yeah, definitely a little bit flatter, less wallowy in dynamic mode. I could do with a bit more power at higher speeds, to be honest. On the highway, this feels a little bit sluggish. Especially when that boost kind of wears off. A bit more conservative of a battery management system here. Not a lot of steering feel, pretty numb, and of course it's wet out, it's rainy, can't really tell what's going on. You can see the boost mode creeping back up there as the system cools. They're definitely much faster EVs for the money out there. So you kind of have to decide what you think is important and what you want to prioritize with your purchase. I've got to say, in dynamic mode, the suspension's actually kind of about perfect. Less floaty, really well controlled. Audi's done a great job with their air suspension tuning here. Do we have a launch control? Let's find out. do. It's not very impressive though. Wild turkey. All right, guys. Thanks again for watching. That's about all I have to say about the Audi Q8 e-tron Sportback, S-Line, Quattro, etc., etc. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Take care. Audi still has my favorite lock chime. So classy, so cool. Love how the headlights kind of just appear. That's a really neat animation. Taillights do the same thing. This is a deceivingly large car. It looks just like a kind of a big sedan, but it's pretty big on the road. It has a good amount of interior volume too. .22-inch wheels are probably a little bit excessive. I bet you'd save some range without them, but I don't know how much of a smaller wheel you'd be able to fit over these brakes. You'd probably get some 20s or 21s in there. Maybe 21s, about the smallest you could go. Yeah. Alright guys, this is the future. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you later. Take it easy.